Grow, Sell, and Retire is the podcast for the lazy overachiever. B.D. Dalton, author of True Gravity and Grow, Sell, and Retire, is here to give you his 25 years of secrets, tips, and systems to take your business to the next level. This is your chance to find out what is working in sales, marketing, and running your business. If you stop learning, you stop earning. Now, here's your host, BD, with today's GSR podcast.
Hey, Grow, Sell, and Retire listeners. BD Dalton here with my interview with Rick Smith, the author of The End of Killing. He brought the taser forward for us, created an amazing business, has some really good tips for you. So sit back, grab a piece of paper and a pen, and listen to my interview with Rick Smith. Hey everybody, BD Dalton here, the Grow, Sell, and Retire podcast, talking to Rick Smith. We're going to be talking about The End of Killing, the book that you've written, but also just talking about business in general. So kind of walk me through what got you to writing the book, The End of Killing.
Yeah, so I was actually at a dinner conversation or a dinner event with a bunch of entrepreneurs, and one of the people started a conversation with this question: what do you believe that nobody else believes? And when it came around to me, I said, well, I actually think we're getting to the point where we're approaching the end of war and the end of killing as, an accepted part of human society. And everybody looked at me like I was completely crazy. And then as I explained it, sort of people started to come around to the idea, and somebody said, this is a really interesting topic. You should write a book on it. And so I did. Figured, well, this is an important topic, and it's actually a trend that's been happening for a couple hundred years that we tend not to see because, we're fascinated by violence, whether it's in movies or video games or in the media, but we've actually become far, far less violent as a species and as a society. And I think that's a trend that we should do everything we can to continue.
Now, so you have your book. You talk about The End of Killing. You have your company, but you go back to how does somebody that's I've read the bio, and from Harvard, neuroscientist, now become CEO and of a taser company, if you want. I mean, for keeping it as simple as possible for people.
Yeah. So the way a lot of entrepreneurs start, you have some sort of personal incident that makes you really interested in solving a certain problem. So for me, I had a couple of friends that were shot and killed in a road rage incident.
Wow.
And the guy who killed him was a businessman who had a gun in the glove box. So it wasn't like the stereotypical bad guy or gangster. It was, just another person who had, I guess a bit of a temper and
a really bad day.
Yeah. Well, he had a really bad day too, because now he's spending his life in prison and my two friends were dead. And I became very interested in the gun control issue and the gun issue in general. And to me, the thing that struck me, I was living in Belgium at the time. And, in Europe, you don't see those same sorts of issues. And what sort of struck me was that we have this really polarized debate. On one side, people, obviously say we should have more gun control. On the other side, people say, well, that's against the Constitution or whatever. And for me, the thing that was just interesting was, why is it that we're still shooting people with flying projectiles made of lead? I mean, it's really a medieval technology that's about 400 or 500 years old. And it struck me that nobody has approached this seriously from a different perspective, which is we should just be making bullets obsolete. Like, there's got to be a better way for people like this individual who killed my two friends. If he felt the need to protect himself, and my two buddies were playing college football, they were big guys, they were kind of aggressive. And as this altercation spun out of control, if that guy had something else he could have used besides a gun, I think most rational people, if they could get Captain Kirk's phaser from Star Trek, they would want to use that instead, right? People don't inherently want to kill somebody. It's just today that is the state of the art when you go to defend yourself. And so one thing led to another. I was in business school. So of course, as I got interested in this, I started to explore if there was a business opportunity. And I discovered that a device called the taser had been invented back in the late 1960s. It's actually a brand name for it stands for Thomas A. Swift's electric rifle, for these electrified weapons. And so I started researching it and discovered the guy who invented it was a NASA scientist who lived in Tucson, Arizona. And I literally dialed 411, got his phone number, and called him up, said, "Hey, I'm this 23-year-old graduate student. I'm interested in whatever happened to this taser thing you invented." And next thing I know, I'm on his doorstep and talking him into starting a business together to give it another shot.
Wow, that's awesome. So one of the things you talked about there was, and this is my big thing, is you're challenging a norm. You're going against the mentally, or in government and business standards. The NRA is one of the huge lobbying powers throughout the world. In the U.S. mainly, but still throughout the world. So how is it going against such a huge constitutional right and also such a huge group of people that believe that this is their God-given right in the States?
Yeah, well, what's interesting is we actually don't go against the NRA. We're philosophically compatible with them. One thing we've done is we've tried to approach something that is a very, it's a very intense topic, shall we say, and one where people have very strong beliefs. And we don't require anybody to change their belief structure. We sell, for example, most of our customers are police who tend to be very pro-gun, at least in the United States.
Yes.
They have a very intimate relationship with their guns. And so we've taken this approach that says, look, we're not trying to take away anything. Like if you still want to own a horse and ride a horse, God bless you. But most people choose to ride around in a car now. And same thing, we're not suggesting that we need to take people's guns away. We want to give them something better. And with that framing, I think, people have generally been pretty accepting that, okay, if you're making this a choice, and by the way, we're not there yet. We've also had to be pretty careful that the technology where we're at today is not yet a replacement for the firearm. We're not as reliable. We don't have the range. And part of the reason for me to write the book was also to sort of set this out, to begin to challenge people's thinking, because I think within 10 years, we will be at a point where non-lethal weapons can actually begin to challenge the primacy of the lethal weapon, meaning that we have to be as reliable and actually more effective at stopping someone quickly than a bullet in order for us to achieve our goal.
Yeah, and like you said, from the distance and with all the other bits that come along with what we're used to now with projectiles. But
yep.
So when you're doing this, so you call Arizona, you go after the 411, you get the information, you go meet the guy on the doorstep. How do you get somebody to say, yeah, that sounds like a good idea? And what were your first steps that you went about when you were kind of setting up the business?
Yeah, so having been through this now, when I talk to other entrepreneurs, I have a couple of key pieces of advice. The first one is, if your idea sounds crazy, that can actually be a good thing. If people don't tell you your idea is crazy, then chances are somebody's already tried it, or you're not really stretching boundaries here. Peter Diamandis, who did the X Prize famously, that started the private space industry, has a saying that the day before something is a breakthrough, it's just another crazy idea. And so when I talk to entrepreneurs who are getting started and they're getting discouraged because everybody's telling them human beings are instinctively going to challenge and push back on new ideas. So first thing is you just got to get comfortable with people telling you you're crazy. And the second piece was, everything starts at no. So when I first met with Jack Cover, was this researcher's name, we had a nice meeting, and then I discovered, he told me what he'd been working on. He was 73 years old, and he was out trying to raise money to do another company himself. And so when I suggested we should work together, his answer was no. But I just called him every couple of days, and I kept the conversation going. And over about 3 weeks, he eventually warmed up, and he was not having a lot of success raising money himself. He he had done 2 previous companies trying to do this taser weapon, and both of them had not gone very well. They both went under.
Yes.
And but I was able to round up $100,000 from friends and family. And so finally, just by continuing to talk to him and throw different ideas at the wall, eventually we found, part of it was I just wore him down, that he I think got sick of me calling him. And part of it was it just sort of kept iterating to understand what his desires were, what it was going to take for him to want to work with me. And interestingly, it was what he really wanted patent royalties. He had no interest in equity. He didn't really understand business very well and had been frustrated by his prior attempts. So he wanted the certainty of, I want $2 per unit in a royalty. And that was great. I was like, wow, that's actually
short-term thinking. That's interesting.
Yeah. So a lot of it's just pressing. You just start working on a problem and you just keep going after it.
So you've got crazy is good. You've got everything starts at no. And then you said, are there any other axioms that or things that you push through on entrepreneurs?
The other one I would say is just the, sort of the famous Nike tagline of just do it. I think a lot of people will have an idea for a business, but it never feels like you have a great plan early, or that you understand enough, right? So I think there's a tendency for people to feel like, oh, I need to keep researching this, or I don't. It just doesn't feel like you know what you're doing well enough to go do it. And I think the answer is there is no perfect business plan. You need to get comfortable enough that there's a value proposition there, and then you just start working it. I think sometimes people never actually get started because they feel like they don't have the plan fully baked. And I think that's like kind of a common misconception that most entrepreneurs I've talked to who've been successful, their ultimate business is nothing like the business plan they wrote originally. The business plan you write it's a starting point. Like they say in the military, I guess, no battle plan survives the first shot. It starts changing as soon as you engage the enemy. Same thing with a business plan. As soon as you start working on it, you begin to learn things, and your plan has to be flexible. And just as you start working on the problem you're going after, every day you get out of bed and you say, okay, what can I do? What problems do I need to solve today? What's the next thing I need to do?
And I think that's a big thing. I think the other thing that you came through on this, and you're tracking it down. The thing that kind of rings out to me is that you didn't have a brand new idea, or you didn't have the brand new thing, but it was you kind of brought together something that was already there, but put a structure and a vision behind it. I think that's everybody tries to go out, and not everybody, but a lot of people try to go out and create the next piece of software, or the next whatever else it is, versus trying to solve a problem. Or that's actually another really interesting thing. When I first started talking to Jack, the inventor who became my co-founder, my initial feeling was one of really despair, when it was, oh God, somebody else has already thought of this. Somebody else has already done it, and you have this instinct that says, well, maybe I should just go do something else, because clearly this isn't a brand new idea. And I couldn't have been more wrong. That actually, the fact somebody else had already tried this accelerated my opportunity ultimately, because I could learn from what went wrong the last time around, et cetera. So, but even to this day, like, as we work on new ideas, when you come across someone else who has already done something similar, it still can be very demotivating. And ultimately, you've got to just sort of push through that and actually go reach out to that person. So if you think, oh, there's someone who might be a competitor, I can't tell you, there's probably been 5 or 6 times where I've looked at something as a potential competitor. And then when you finally reach out, you either find some way to collaborate, or you learn something key about it. So don't be demotivated when you find out your idea is not entirely new.
there are very few entirely new ideas in the world, but what you're not looking for necessarily a brand new idea. You're looking for, like, how do I solve a problem in a new and different way that maybe somebody else has tried and just hasn't succeeded. But what can I learn from how they failed, or, how they tried to do this idea that I might, riff on it and use it as a starting point.
Well, and they would have had some sort of desire or drive or some reason why they started the company too. So, and they might have been just poor at either execution or distribution or funding or whatever else it is. So if you're good at all this, you can find yourself a partner.
Their timing could have just been wrong. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that can change that make now better than, when somebody else tried it.
So one other thing, so you're a people person, and one of the things that really excited me when I looked through your thing is, are you still doing your employee engagement? You're increasing the exponential pay system at work?
Yep, we are.
And could you explain that a little bit for the people that aren't there and how you came around to it?
Yeah, so a couple of years ago, my compensation committee of my board came to me, and I had been talking with them. I was at the midpoint of my career, and I was going through a little bit of soul searching about, do I want to do another startup before, my career is over, or, me at this midpoint of the career, what, sort of what's next. But I really love the mission of the company that I'm at. And anyway, Elon Musk and Tesla had done this really sort of innovative, super high risk, high reward compensation plan for Elon as the CEO, where he took no pay, but basically had the opportunity to earn 1% of the company back for every, basically starting from where he was at. If he doubled the company, he'd get 1%. If he tripled it, he'd get 2%. If he quadrupled it, he'd get 3%. And so for every multiple, he would get another 1%. And so the compensation committee came to me and said, "Hey, what do you think of this?" And of course, as an entrepreneur, I said, "Oh, this is great. This really scratches that urge for me to, I'm much more interested in building things and participating in the value I'm building than sort of being a paid employee." So we went to the shareholders and they approved it. And that's where things got interesting because, when you announce this to the entire company, in particular my senior management team, who I spent a lot of time with, there was this awkwardness where everybody was like, "Well, that's great for you, Rick. Sort of what about us?" And so we basically hired the same people who'd helped develop the comp plan initially for Elon Musk at Tesla. And we sat down with them and said, "Look, I want to see if there's a way we can scale this for everybody in the company to be able to participate in some way." Now, most people probably can't afford to give up their entire pay. And many people don't have that sort of risk tolerance. They wouldn't want to even if they could. But what if we could design a compensation package where people could opt into it with a percentage of their comp, and they could sort of design their own compensation plan with how much risk they want to take, and then we would align their payouts to the same milestones as mine, so we could achieve a high degree of alignment across the entire company. And the punchline is that's what we were able to achieve. We call it our exponential stock plan. And basically, depending on your compensation level, we do have guardrails that people can only put in a certain percentage based on how much they're paid. And below a certain threshold, we just give everybody some stock. With the exception, we do have some international employees in countries where we can't do this. So there, we're just going to do it with cash. But fundamentally, everybody in the company gets to participate at some level. And it's been just tremendous in terms of the amount of alignment and excitement it has created across the entire company, where now everybody is focused on hitting these 12 goals over the next, we have about 8.5 years left in the plan. And I think this may end up being the greatest single invention we've done as a company, is creating this alignment system, because it's created the feel that we're like a giant startup where everybody has the same goals and the same opportunity to make what is for most people a life-changing amount of wealth.
That's awesome. That's it. It's very, very kind of socialistic, but also capitalistic all at the same time. So,
it's something I'm really proud of, and I can tell you, particularly for the people who report to me at the highest levels of the company, they have the opportunity to buy in at the highest levels, and it completely shifted the team dynamic in a very positive way.
Very cool. So how about some fun questions now? So what are your goals for the year?
So for this year, this is a year for us that's very big in operations. We're launching 4 major products in the span of 12 months.
Wow.
So we are heads down executing, which is both fun and it's a little challenging for me in that I love being, involved in the creative idea process. And right now our organization is in that mode where it's like, hey, we don't need any more ideas. We just need to execute. We've got two of these products to really get out the door by the end of the year.
Wow, and that's not very long. It's pretty much September now, so you've got to roll them out quick.
Yep. One is our first body camera with LTE, so it's a live streaming body camera. Wow. And the other one is a pure software product called Axon Records. It's basically like an ERP for police. It's their whole report writing and record management system that we're also rolling out right now.
That's huge. That'll be very good for them, because I know that's one of the things that hampers most government organizations, isn't it? Healthcare and police and that type of stuff. So what tech book or podcast are you currently are changing your life?
Let's see. So I just read, The Coddling of the American Mind was quite interesting, where it's sort of, it's not necessarily a business book, but right now, at least in the U.S. and from what I've seen, in some other countries as well, we have this balkanization happening where, people are becoming really polarized and very, the world feels very divisive. And so this book, The Coddling of the American Mind, is written by 2 liberal academics, but who have a pretty interesting take on sort of the divisiveness that's happening in the world. The punchline is basically, we need to get back to true sort of the academic sense of liberalism, that, we challenge each other's ideas respectfully and that we're open-minded in how we approach problem solving, as opposed to some of the thing right now where if somebody disagrees with me, that makes them an enemy or a member of the opposing camp. And for me, that's been pretty helpful too, because in our business, we're trying to solve these really divisive problems, whether it's the gun problem or whether it's like violence in policing is also a very divisive problem. You have people that are very pro-police and people that, are pretty anti-police. And I think ultimately those polarized views don't get you anywhere. You have to be able to sit down and rationally go through a problem and learn from people with different viewpoints. I think it's something the world could use more of right now.
That's cool. And then how about any tech? Anything else? Anything that's keeping you in line or happy or cheered up or G'd up or?
Oh yeah, I'm really excited about what's happening in virtual reality right now. I just got the new Oculus Quest,
yes,
which is their $400, headset, VR headset with controllers. So it's a 6th degree of freedom. You can move through virtual space. It is really compelling. In fact, we're doing some work now on how we can use virtual reality for training with police officers, because one of the big issues isn't just tech, it's how do we change the mindset so that police don't reach for their gun too quickly. And we think VR is a really awesome way to be able to train people in a highly immersive way.
That's cool. VR's, one of my clients is big in VR in the gaming sector, but also in healthcare and mental states. So it's an amazing way to do stuff without having human interaction, in a bad way, but still having humans there. So,
yeah, and I think we are hitting a break point or a breakout moment right now where VR, the Quest, because you're not wired to a PC, to a computer, the ability to get up and walk around your house. is kind of a game changer, and just the simplicity of the user interface.
So how and where do you want our listeners to come find you, or learn more about you, or kind of glean more information from you?
Got it. Well, if you're interested in learning more about this whole idea and approach about reducing violence in society, so my book is available through all the channels, Amazon and other bookstores. It's called The End of Killing. And I have a website, endofkilling.com, which is a great place. People want to sort of learn more, in a quick and easy way about what we're doing.
Cool. And then we'll put that in the show notes and everything else. But okay, here's the last one. And this is your valuable quick-fire tip for anybody. So if they just tuned into the last 10 seconds here and they say, okay, I want to go back and listen to the rest of this, what's your quick-fire tip to the listeners about business?
I think the main thing is just act now. Just start going after whatever the problem is that's in front of you. If you've got an idea for a business, like get working on the business plan and start working on. Just don't fall prey to sort of the analysis paralysis or thinking you've got to wait till you have a perfect plan. I think action is what matters, and just get after it.
Rick Smith, thank you very much for coming on Grow, Sell, and Retire. I really appreciate your time, and the information was amazing for the listeners.
Awesome. It was great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for joining us on Grow, Sell, and Retire. For more information, tools, or to book one of our team members to work with your team, business, or to speak at your event or conference, visit bartdaltonconsulting.com or email contact@bartdaltonconsulting.com. Buy the book True Gravity on Amazon. If you want to work for the rest of your life, that is your business. If you don't, that is ours.